Please make a donation to the Heroes at Home, Cancer Sucks, as well as the Making Strides charities. 3 awesome charities that do a world of good for our men and women in the military and those suffering from cancer. And to our awesome cops, military personnel, and emergency responders, please stay safe. You're always in our hearts.
This is the tomb of Rassilon, where Rassilon lies in eternal sleep.
Did Surak convince Rassilon to cease the games on Gallifrey?
This is the game of Rassilon.
Hey folks and fans, this is your blind dyslexic. I was on one of the Star Trek fan pages, Facebook of course, when I mentioned how I would love to see the Doctor do something with Star Trek. And somebody says, well, they really can't do it because of chronology and how things line up. And I had to agree. But still, my mind started working. Started thinking, how can we set things up to where Star Trek is responsible for something in Doctor Who and vice versa? I know I'm probably going to get some haters because of it, but nonetheless, started sitting there and I thought, and then I realized there's only one person we can honestly start with. Only one. And that is Surak, the founder of Vulcan Logic. So it started me thinking, what if he was one of the individuals in the olden times when the Time Lords, Rassilon in general, was kidnapping aliens and putting them through the games. And if all who are familiar with the 5 Doctors, you know what I'm talking about. The first time we saw Surak was in, I think it was the Savage Curtain or something like that. I'll leave the name right down here. I'm brain farting on the name. And then we saw him again, or we heard him mentioned or seen in an Enterprise adventure. And then mentioned throughout every genre of Star Trek as possible. Now with Rassilon, there's some discrepancy. Some say he's one of the founders. The others say there's Omega, who got trapped in an antimatter universe, which the 5th Doctor and 3rd Doctor each encountered at some point in their regenerations. In fact, the first time basically was the one that freed the 3rd Doctor from his banishment. But nonetheless, it started me thinking, what if Rassilon, being the founder of Vulcan Logic, sat old Rassilon down and explained to him how these games do nothing? He sets him down and uses his logic, and whether or not Surak was one of the winners of the games or just simply happened upon him, the little deliberation between he and Rassilon started clicking, making him understand. Because at some point in the future, the Time Lords are going to have to do 2 other things. Take up the non-interference underworld, and take up and swear for violence, state of decay. But either way, Rassilon listens to Surak, listens to how rational he sounds. But of course, as we know from the Five Doctors, someone pits 4 out of the 5 Doctors against other aliens to find the Ring of Rassilon, so they too can gain Rassilon's prize of immortality. So I'm going to ask you this one question, or I should say this one riddle.
To lose is to win, and he who wins shall lose.
I know what it
Were the Cardassians behind the plague that ravaged Draconia long before their occupation of Bajor?
Next up here on The Blind Dyslexic, Cardassians, the reason for the plague that ravaged Draconia. Once again, another quick history lesson. Draconia was ravaged by a plague around 20, I'll leave the thing down here. I think it was 2340 or 2140. I forget which. Like I said, I'll leave the deal right in here. And the Doctor aided in, they didn't really specify which Doctor in Frontier in Space, but he aided in the finding a cure for the plague, which granted the Doctor nobility and the right to say, "My life at your command," giving the Wakanda arm folding. All right. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the Cardassians, whether they were related to the Draconians or not, that's another discussion for another day. What if the Cardassians were the ones that created said plague? And due to the time span between that plague and the occupation of Bajor, the Doctor really didn't realize that the base of the plague was just like the plagues that Cardassia created to try to decimate Bajor, the Bajorans. Interesting way of looking. Who's to say? Something to think about. But that is another way they could combine Trek and Who.
Could the Vulcans have accidentally influenced the Cybermen prior to their return to Earth in 1986?
The Vulcans are responsible for the Cybermen. Alright. A Vulcan ship comes upon what they assume is Earth, because Mondas was its twin. But they quickly realize it's Mondas. But they find the inhabitants only at the standpoint of replacing their body parts with plastic and cybernetics. Prior to their departure, the Mundonians realized how well the Vulcans got along without emotions, so they pretty much thought, wouldn't that be cool? Fast forward now to 1986, Mondas returns to his home system, and the Cybermen are attempting to drain its twin, Earth, of its precious energy. Drains too much, is destroyed, and the Doctor is forced to regenerate for the first time. That's how they could set up how a connection between the two.
You've been watching TBD on Star Trek to Doctor Who, an industry look on how they could combine both two long-running sci-fi programs. I'm your host, the Blind Dyslexic. If you like what you're seeing, please hit the subscribe button, the bell to let you be notified when I do casts, as well as make a tiny little comment here or there. I do other podcasts, as well as walkabouts. As always, I am your Blind Dyslexic. I thank you for watching. Ciao for now.